All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Ziemer, VP of Strategic Accounts and Technology Partnerships at Imagine Communications. Joining me today from Sinclair Broadcast Group is Mike Kralec, VP of Technical Operations and Deputy CTO, and Don Roberts, VP of Sports Engineering and Production Systems. And today we're going to discuss the business and technology drivers behind the move to future state playout architectures. Mike and Don, thanks for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you.
Over the past 18 months or so, Sinclair has modernized playout in several parts of your business: national networks, regional sports networks, and live event origination. These projects contain a mix of on-prem and cloud architecture. I'd like to discuss the factors that went into your decision-making process when evaluating these various playout models. Don, why don't we start with you? Can you describe the architecture you ultimately chose for the regional sports network migration and some of the business and operational factors that led to that decision?
Sure. Just a quick history of why we did what we're doing. When we purchased the regional sports networks from Disney about a year and a half or so ago, the technical operation is housed at a facility out at the Woodlands in Texas, and that was that was not part of the deal. We had to build our own facility. So we internally had a lot of discussion about whether we wanted to do it ourselves, whether we wanted to partner up with a provider, and we ended up with the latter. But we chose, from a technology perspective, that we wanted to build a 2110 facility. This is our third, well, maybe fourth one at this point. So we had some history, we had some experience on how to do it. We wanted to, I hate to use this word, but try to keep it a little bit, not future-proof, but the ability to grow it if we need to. So having a core IP infrastructure lends itself to do that more than a traditional HDSDI facility does. So we chose that. We chose 2110 IP infrastructure. The business piece of it was the partnership with Encompass to operate it for us in conjunction with ourselves, and when we drove the technology decisions at Encompass for the most part. We had history with Imagine that was very successful in the past, so we chose that particular vendor as a core for both playout and for the core infrastructure for routing and a bunch of other pieces. So that facility today is about 95% complete. We go into a testing mode in about 3 weeks, and actually it's gone pretty well so far. I will also say that this project has also had some other complications. The FCC at the same time required us to consolidate our C-band bandwidth with Intelsat, so that's happening at the same time. So we had on top of building a facility like this, we also had to build a whole brand new distribution platform as well. So, and that's just online last week. So those are some of the highlights, Chris. I hope that answers.
That's great. Thanks, Don. It's an on-prem playout architecture driven by an on-prem automation system and on-prem video servers. What role does cloud play in that facility today, in that project today? And how do you see the role of cloud expanding over time in context of the regional sports networks?
Yeah, well, I can take this, Don.
Yeah, sure.
So right now we're using the cloud for our archive throughout. So there's a large migration process for us right now, moving the existing archives from the existing facility to a cloud-based archive. So that's the main initial cloud piece. There's another part around disaster recovery and making sure that we can play out a disaster recovery feed from the cloud also. But right now that's it, and I think over time you'll see us iterate from there. So you'll see us take components of the overall system and build them out into the cloud from there.
Thanks. And Mike, you led the initiative to originate Sinclair's national networks fully from the cloud using Imagine's Versio platform. What led the decision to go all in on cloud for that project?
I think we understand the risk reduction from cloud. I think we understand the benefits in operational flexibility, but it's only, the place to start is and I've said this before, to start with a place where you have good stakeholder engagement, because this is mostly a change management effort, not the technology is a relatively low. I mean, it's a smaller piece of this. It's more we're gonna change workflows. We're going to reduce waste. We're going to take the way we've done business and we're going to change it. And so that really comes down to engagement from the operations manager, engagement from the business owner, engagement from the technical resources. But this is absolutely the reason we chose the national networks as the first place, was because of the level of stakeholder engagement we had, the buy-in that we had from the business, and it's worked well. We've done great with it, so I've been very happy.
That makes sense. Thank you. So Don, back to the sports-centric facilities for a minute, and you mentioned 2110 at Encompass in Atlanta. You also led the initiative to build the new tennis channel facility in Santa Monica, also 2110 based, primary origination on the premise and live event overflow in the cloud. But let's look to the production elements of that facility for a minute, right? How did you leverage cloud in this tennis channel project? And, same question, if you were to build this a year from now, how do you think that would change in a production-centric context?
Yeah, I mean, the cloud component of tennis is the answer is very similar to what Mike mentioned earlier with regard to archiving and. But there's one component that we're doing it like right now as we speak, this very minute in time, and it lends itself to the flexibility of cloud playout. Tennis has a bunch of different tournaments they're producing that are being distributed via the RSNs, and tennis actually has its own master control on site, on-prem Versio-based master control layout system. And as a requirement, we need to be very agile with what we can do with tennis, because there's a lot of changes that happen quickly with them. And this RSN distribution piece was one of those examples. And instead of building yet another on-prem channel, Mike and I got together with his team and we talked about spinning up a channel in the cloud with Versio to do this very thing. And I think it took 4 or 5 weeks maybe at the most.
Yeah, 5 or 6 weeks.
Start to finish. And again, it's working flawlessly. It's being operated by the mass control operators in Santa Monica. And there are workflows in place that are somewhat similar to what they're doing on-prem. And it was a very, very seamless process. And it's worked well, and it essentially delivers a signal from Santa Monica to the Woodlands in Texas for satellite distribution. And it's a fully decorated bugs, graphics, audio, everything, spots, it's all in there. So and in this particular case, we're spinning it up when tennis needs it for specific tournaments, and we spin it down when we're done. And that you can't do in an on-prem situation. You make the big investment in capital, and if you're not using it, you're still paying for it. So it's a great use case for that. And interestingly, this is unlike the national networks that Mike was discussing earlier. Tennis is live, so this is a live feed that is happening, which takes it, even though it's not crazy, it does take it to another level. And again, it's with partners, like yourself LTN, we've been very successful with it. So that's sort of the cloud part of Tennis Channel.
And I'll just follow up on that. Is that I think as we for Tennis Channel, it's been a one-time thing, right? This was a one-off. So I think what we'll see is over time, we were able to deliver a robust signal to the cloud for the Tennis Channel through some existing partnerships. But I think what you're going to see is a changeover towards a more a planned system. Instead of this being a one-off type of thing, there's going to be a lot more effort into the workflows, understanding the processes, understanding the ingest, all the robust ingest pieces here, understanding, to a deeper level, the time synchronization required, the signaling in the stream that's required. We were able to handle these sort of one-off in this case for the Tennis Channel. But if you're going to build this bigger, if you're going to make this, bigger system in general, if you're going to do this for more regional sports networks or outside of tennis, you're going to plan for a much more robust process and implement something that can give you that operational flexibility, but be consistent throughout your operation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's a theme of transition here. We have very large on-prem systems where primary origination is on the ground, overflow is bursting to cloud. Some segments of your business make sense to migrate fully, as you talked about in the national networks. So you also say that over time, this is part of a broader migration. There's this kind of steady stream and migration of services moving from the premise to cloud over a period of time. So what slows that migration down, right? You've mentioned the ton of benefits of moving to the cloud, but there are real change management elements involved in these things, right? So if you look across that, horizon from, business, processes to operational change management to technical, depth and expertise, what do you think the biggest challenges lie? What would prevent you just from flipping the switch and moving everything now?
I think, to be honest, I think we're waiting for some of the, we're still waiting for some of the technology to catch up. Mm-hmm. We're still trying to think about this as a services-based ecosystem. This isn't just, lift and shift, which hopefully everybody knows that term. Putting the software in the cloud by itself doesn't necessarily, it does, there are some benefits recognized from that, but not the overwhelming benefit that we've got planned for a more services-based infrastructure for media operations. It doesn't get you everything you can. You only get there through that process of planning out, understanding what your workflows are, understanding where you can take out, business as usual that's developed over the last 25 years, whatever the case may be. Over time, what's slowing the transition is really just making sure that we understand all of the pieces that are going to move, everything that's going to change. And that's it. I mean, it is iteration. That's why we're taking this a small piece at a time. It's why, taking the archives, is a good example of, how do we get archive right? And what are all the media workflows around archive? Because there's not one, there's 5, there's 10, it's all the different stakeholders involved. And it's just going to take time to iterate through these components. And we can do some now, and over time, hopefully the software, some of the infrastructure, some of the services that exist in the cloud will hopefully evolve as we're taking care of some of the pieces, that we decided to start iterating through. So it's going to be a process, and choosing the right ones now is key to start recognizing the benefit of cloud, but it will take time.
Yeah, and Chris, if I may add one thought to that, and it's a word you use and Mike used as well. I mean, it is a transition. It has a start and a middle and an end. But there's also, as this transition takes place over some period of time, it's also transformative because the business changes and the way we operate changes. So it's not something you just go flip the switch on today and say we're just going to run all these television stations and all these RSNs from the cloud. It's way more complex and deeper than that.
That's a really good point. In that transition, feels as if there is a definitive end, but there isn't in this process. The evolution continues as additional benefits come online for cloud, either additional services or additional software, as capability, or as capabilities are recognized as being necessary inside the business. The architecture can change, right? We can change the operational workflow if we understand it as well as we should when we move to cloud in the first place. Then you have a path to evolution instead of an endpoint.
Yeah, and that's probably a better way to describe this, as evolutionary.
Yeah. And it's clear that the business challenges that continue to evolve can't be served with legacy infrastructure. The migration needs to happen.
And the business changes too over time.
Yeah. All right, well, that's great. Thank you, guys. We're almost out of time, but I see Francesco has a couple of questions. Says, Mike, you mentioned you were waiting for tech to catch up, which I think you addressed. What kind of tech is specifically lagging behind? 20 seconds on that one.
Yeah, no, I think we're seeing. We've seen a lot of media built on top of Windows over the last decade, 2 decades. I think the push towards in cloud is towards containerization, is towards more event messaging type of buses for communication. I'm getting kind of technical here, but it really is around, I think, container orchestration. I think it's around event messaging between different services and subsystems. And I think it's that continued migration of media services to a Linux-based environment.
That's great, thanks. And then for Don, I think Tennis Channel seems to be a successful live production example in the cloud. Why would you not produce all live in the cloud? So I think that's kind of similar to the why not just flip the switch question, but in a more production-centric context. Yeah,
and Francesco, the production component of tennis is still very much on-prem. The production piece is not in the cloud. It's the transmission and the mass control component of it that is. There are some cloud production vendors that are available today, and then we're looking at all of those to move not just tennis production into a cloud environment, but also RSN production to some extent. So, the thing about Sinclair is we never stop. We're always looking. We're always trying to innovate, and we're always trying to keep one step ahead of ourselves. And from myself and Mike and Del Parks and Brian Bark, and there's a bunch of us that's what we do. So we'll get there. It's just, again, a question of when.
All right, then last question. Don, I hear you went from SDI to 2110. What are also from Francesco? What are the obstacles that you avoid from jumping from SDI to cloud directly?
Ooh, maybe Francesco and I should just have a phone call.
Yeah. Put Don's cell number in the chat.
It's the 2110. The Tennis Channel 2110 decision was made for a couple of different reasons. And the cloud actually wasn't a major component of that decision. It was, we look at our production facilities, we have RSN studios, we have news studios, we have Tennis Channel studios. It's like, how can we effectively utilize all the properties we have today? And then we felt that 2110 what was a stepping stone for us to get there. So we're building more and more facilities on that platform. And SDI is a tried and true. Everybody knows it. We know how it works, but we're trying to again look down the road, and SDI, it seemed to be we need to jump off at some point, and this was it. So I hope that answers your question.
All right. Very good. So I think we're a couple minutes over time. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure as always, and it's a very exciting time for you and Sinclair. So we look forward to continuing the conversation. Appreciate you spending time with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.